I I find it difficult to fathom why this doesn't already exist. Why this isn't on the market. Um, it might be actually. Maybe it's just being poorly marketed. But I want to bring this to market, man. I have to design it though because well, I have an idea that it'd just be like this straight arm that just flows alongside next to your gas inlet pipe that runs to your gas tank. So it'd just be like straight. And it maybe be as long as my arm. And it'd have three fingers, a thumb and index and middle. And it'd just be straight. And then a string would be tied here and then up to here to a little pulley and then come back again maybe. Or no, the motor could just be here. So we wouldn't even need a pulley. The tip of the motor could be the pulley. And the motor starts turning and it starts drawing the arm because it's connected to a string. And the arm's on a track. Um, or it's just in a sleeved system, kind of like the different channel loops of a fishing pole. So those loops just kind of guide it, and the arm just slides through, like it's being given birth out the hole, as it's being reeled up by this little motor that's at the face of the opening hole. So the motor winds, and the arm has a string connected to the motor, and the motor's reeling up that string, and that draws the arm out. So the arm comes all the way out. And then from there, the arm's just like my robot arm. It's going to have motors mounted on it in the forearm and in the bicep, and it's going to be a human anatomically correct arm, except nothing. It just needs to be kept pretty small in form factor. So maybe I wouldn't actually, I could have a smaller ulna and radius than a typical arm, and a smaller bicep bone, whatever the name of that one is, the humerus. A smaller humerus, so we're talking pretty tiny. And rather than mounting the servos in the forearm, we would mount the servos inside the vehicle. And they would be connected by strings, and they would be all mounted at the base of the arm, which never would fully escape the vehicle. And so all these motors in here, there need to be like 30 of them. They'd either be mounted and they'd move with the shoulder, or they'd be mounted just around that area, just inside the escape tube of the car. And they'd be connected by strings to all the muscle tie-in points and to the finger tie-in points. And the fingers could be pretty basic. They're just grippers pretty much. But they need to be advanced enough to grab a credit card and swipe it, and to grab the gas thing and squeeze it. And it will need a wrist so that it can turn the gas thing and put it into the gas tank, which will be like right here. If you picture my arms coming out of a car, my arm came out and then the gas thing came out, so it would need to do that. And it will need this. So it will need a shoulder joint, which will be the last thing to exit. It will need a shoulder joint. It will need to go up, down like that. It will need to be able to do that, and then these. So it will need a wrist. So it will need most of the functionality of an arm, but it's going to be as skinny as possible so that it can exit through the same port as your fuel cap pump, which needs to be moved all the way to the side of the compartment. And maybe the compartment can be opened up a little bit on the inside as well to make a little more room for the arm to come out, maybe at an angle, to maximize the space available for the arm to exit through, because it needs to get out through that little compartment. So the arm has to be as small as possible, which I think is totally doable. And so yeah, that would be the design of the arm, and it would just need to be able to slide all the way in, following to the gas tank. And I think that's totally doable as well. So there you have it. That's a pretty simple design. I think that's doable. My arm length, yeah, you need to be at arm's length away from the fuel pump. So yeah, I think the length of the arm would be no more than my arm, honestly. So that's about 27 inches. You would need to be able to park 27 inches away from the fuel pump thing. I think that's doable. And plus it can instruct you, like I said, you need to move another foot closer, sir. Back up another 6 inches. Like, it can instruct you to get really close to the pump. If you're not a good driver or whatever, or you think you're close enough, it would tell you to move closer through its speakers. So, yeah, I mean, there will be some skill to get it nice and close to the pump, because it can't be as... Like, I think most people park about 3 feet away from it, so that they need to park about a foot closer than they're normally used to parking. But that's a small price to pay to then not have to get out of your car and pump the gas yourself. So it's definitely worth it.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm doing a major robotics project.
Well, we already had the discussion, Mike, that gas stations really ought to have robotic arms that enter the pump stuff into your car and whatever, but that's something that the gas station owner would have to decide if it's worth maintaining and purchasing, and if that'd get them a lot more customers or not. And I think most gas station owners would say it probably wouldn't be worth it financially to buy all that stuff. But to have vehicle owners do it who are lazy or just want the convenience, that's a lot more likely. And the kits can be pretty inexpensive, I think. I'm going to 3D print the robot arms and stuff, and it's just a matter of assembling all the motors and all the wiring and shipping it out. And then all the control circuitry, it's going to run off Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, robotics frame, cool. Yeah, I'm doing a major robotics project.
And it's going to need cameras too. I think for the camera should be mounted in the hand, so it can see what it's looking at, like in the palm.
It's pretty much why I started to stream my robotics work, but...
In fact, I think Adam should have a camera in his palm. That's a really convenient place for a camera.
So instead I've started to build the arm.
Yeah, it'd have to recognize the handle and the different interfaces to type in your zip code and stuff after it swipes your credit card. So, yeah, it's going to need some... Like, I'll need to test my prototype at every different major gas station in order to get a wide array of tested and successfully executed different types of pumps and pump handles and interfaces. Like some gas stations you have to click no to a car wash. But I think after you've done like 10 or so different types of gas stations, you'll have the majority of it taken care of. And as customers call in like, hey, it didn't work at my local gas station, I would have to then create a new profile for it to handle that type of gas station and just code it to be able to deal with that one. So I can keep adding to the database. As people tell me, I would have to drive out to that location or have them videotape the whole setup, and then I can program it from the videotape and then run a software update and then have that customer go back to the gas station and run a test for me. And they would be able to confirm or deny whether the updated software is able to handle their specific gas station they're having a problem with. So that's how I could slowly add all the different gas stations to the capabilities of the robot arm with remote updates. So the remote update, I guess, I would have to have capable of being done through USB. So I'd have to maybe have like a USB with micro SD card, just like what they do for 3D printers, and they could plug that USB into the robot arm and upload to the robot arm in that fashion the latest copy. So I would have the ability to send out the latest copy or have them download it from my website, and they would copy it onto their USB that came with the robot, and then they would plug that USB after it has the updated software on it. They'd plug it into the robot would download it, and then they'd have it. They'd have the update. So there would be a manual aspect to that because it wouldn't be Wi-Fi enabled. Well, no. No, I could have it be Wi-Fi enabled, and it could download it from online. If you well, it'd need access to your wireless router password to connect to your Wi-Fi. So even if it was Wi-Fi enabled. Or how about this? It could be Bluetooth enabled, and it could connect to your smartphone, which you can download the latest firmware on your smartphone, and then it can read it off your smartphone through Bluetooth. So I could have a Bluetooth app, and that will sync it that way. So that's how you could update the firmware of the robot through your smartphone and then through Bluetooth from the phone to the robot. There we go. So that's a lot better than having a USB system where you have to download to USB and then copy it. So I'll do it that way. Bluetooth. Bluetooth upgrades.
Yeah, robotics frame, cool. Yeah, I'm doing a major robotics project.
So they would download like a smartphone app. The smartphone app would constantly update to the latest firmware, and then the arm would detect when the smartphone's in reach. It'd connect to it by Bluetooth and check for firmware on the phone, which it automatically downloaded, and the arm would automatically get it. So the customer wouldn't even have to know. I would just email a customer who complained, ask them to videotape the interface of their gas pump, or heck, my robot would be able to film the gas pump and send it to me. Because it's the one that tried and failed to pump gas from that station, so it could like film the screen, and then it could tell the driver, hey, sorry, but this gas pump is in a unrecognized formulation or UI that we've never seen. We're gonna do a firmware update soon. Once we can update and add this type of pump to our database of pump profiles that we support, we'll run an automated firmware update in the coming weeks, and then you'll be able to pump at this gas station. But at this time, we don't support this particular type of gas pump. So it can explain that to the customer or send them a text message, but it can verbally explain it because it'll have speakers to talk. The same way it coaches you to park, it can explain what the problem it's having. And then, yeah, the firmware update will come through automatically through the smartphone. It'll automatically download to their app and then upload to the ARM. So there we go. No, the ballpark retail, I would aim for like $200. Because you have to figure a Raspberry Pi. That's like 30 maybe, or 25. And then you have your motors. You would need about 20 little servo motors. Each one would be about $10. Oh. No, that's 200 right there in motors. Then you need your power supply to integrate with your battery system of your car. You need to run power from your battery so it has power. So the power supply, let's say, so I was way off with the 200. I mean, unless if I could get like servo motors way cheaper, which I bet I can actually. Probably I can get them for 5. Because I would, yeah, I think that's doable eventually. Like once you get like buying in big bulk. Let's just say 10 for now. So we're looking at 10, 200, let's say 250, 300. So it'd be like maybe 500 retail. Maybe 5 or 600, and then you have to pay to get installed. I mean, I think 200 would be a beautiful price point though, if that were possible. Yeah, it's got to be possible. My goal would be $200 retail. Yeah, you're probably right, chicken dinner. I mean, certain rules would still apply. Like every card swiper would either be vertical or horizontal, and you'd be a certain size, and it'd have a certain icon. And my machine would be able to adapt to locate that and then swipe the card in the correct location. I think the hardest part would be interfacing it with all the different UIs. Like some require you to say no to a car wash. I mean, I guess that's about it though. You say no to a car wash, you say yes or no to the receipt. Some of it's a touch screen, and then sometimes you have to press a button. So it would need to have those different variations installed, but I don't think there's going to be that much differences. And the machine would be a little bit adaptable, like kind of figure it out on its own at some point. Because then AI can be quite quality, you know. But yeah, the most expensive part would be to have a mechanic install it for you. Maybe they would charge you like 300 or 400 for the installation. So yeah, I think the part robotic arm that pumps your fuel. Let's say $400. You want to have the idea that this is a quality product that's going to work well. It should be the same price as a smartphone. Smartphones are 500 or 600, right? Apple iPhone. Because if you price it too cheap, then people will just think like, oh, this thing's not going to work well. It's not well made. If you price something, you should price it to indicate the value and quality. So I don't want to immediately price myself into skepticism. People think it's a piece of junk. People think if I'm paying for a robot, it's going to be expensive. If I'm paying for something that's going to work well, it's going to be expensive. So, yeah, I think $399, $400 is a good price point. So 200 was too low. Yeah, 200 would open it up to everybody, but then it'd also be seen as being like a piece of junk. So I think 400 is a good price point. So I would have to just make sure that I can source all the parts and have everything manufactured for well beneath that. And all the manufacturing, I have to insist. To manufacture this stuff, I would have to insist it's all done by my robots. Because that's the future for me. I don't want to hire employees. I don't want to do the manufacturing myself by hand. That's all out of the question. So the only way I'm going to mass manufacture, produce, and sell products at all in my life, this is why I'm building humanoid robotics, is with my humanoid robots. So yes, I would have to wait until my humanoid robots are done before I bring this idea to market. I can still build the prototype now. I can still test it, get all the software perfected. I can do all that before the robot's done. But I'm not going to bring this idea to market for many, many years. And it's going to be once the robot's ready to do the manufacturing for me. This idea isn't going anywhere. If somebody else steals it, who cares? I still think there's a good chance nobody else will steal it because they've had all these years to do it. Nobody has. And it is going to be a challenging project, but I think I can do it. So yeah, I'm gonna have my robots build it for sure. I would consider this a mounted part. I don't think it's changing the car. It's no different than installing speakers in your trunk. But yeah, I don't want to deal with factories or working with hired people or anything. I don't want any of that. I would be willing to have part boards made by a part board printer factory, like a pick and place factory. I would be willing to do that. But even for that, I'd rather have my robots pick and place. I mean, it's going to be way cheaper.